The departure. The train whistle pierced through the morning mist as Arjun Mehta stood on the platform, his single suitcase at his feet. Dawn was just breaking over the small town of Kalpana, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold that would have normally captured his photographer's eye. Today he couldn't bring himself to reach for his camera. "You don't have to go," Priya said, her voice barely audible above the rumble of the approaching train. Her eyes, usually bright with warmth, were red-rimmed from a night of tears and arguments. "We can work through this." Arjun tightened his grip on the handle of his suitcase. "I can't stay, Priya. There's nothing for me here. My photography will never be more than a hobby in Kalpana. I'll be stuck working at my father's shop forever." The words came out harsher than he intended, sharp with the frustration that had been building for months. "Nothing for you here," Priya repeated, stepping back as if he had physically struck her. "So that's what I am to you after 5 years? Nothing?" The train pulled into the station, its brakes screeching against the rails. Passengers began to disembark, their chatter creating a bubble of sound around the two figures locked in their silent standoff. "You know that's not what I meant," Arjun sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "But we want different things. You're committed to the clinic here, to taking over for Dr. Sharma. Your whole life is planned out in this town." "Mine can't be." Priya's shoulders straightened, her medical coat, the symbol of her nearly completed residency, billowing slightly in the breeze. "I'm committed to helping people who need me. That was always our shared dream, Arjun. You with your documentary photography, giving voice to the voiceless. Me with medicine. What changed?" "Reality changed," Arjun replied, picking up his suitcase as the train doors opened. "I need to make a real living, not chase idealistic dreams. The offer from Mahira Architectural Firm is a chance to use my visual skills in a way that actually pays. I can't pass that up." "Then go," Priya said quietly, her arms wrapped around herself. "But don't pretend this is just about career. This is about courage, Arjun. You're running away because you're afraid of the commitment we talked about last week. Afraid of building a life together." The final boarding call echoed through the station. Around them, families embraced in farewell. Lovers made promises of reunion. Arjun and Priya stood in painful contrast, the space between them widening with each second. "Maybe I am," he finally admitted. "Maybe I need to find out who I am away from Kalpana, away from us." Tears spilled down Priya's cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "Then find out. But don't expect me to wait in suspended animation while you discover yourself in the big city." Arjun reached for her hand, but she pulled away. The gesture stung more than any words could have. "I'll call when I'm settled," he said, stepping onto the train. "Don't bother," Priya replied, her expression hardening into a mask of dignity. "Make a clean break, Arjun. That's what you want, isn't it?" As the train began to move, Arjun watched through the window as Priya turned and walked away, her white coat a diminishing speck against the colorful backdrop of the town he'd known all his life. He told himself this pain would fade, that the excitement of Mahira City would soon replace the ache in his chest. 5 years later, he would remember this moment and recognize it for what it truly was, the greatest mistake of his life. The empty victory, Arjun Mehta, stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment, gazing at the glittering skyline of Mahira City. 5 years had transformed him from a small-town photographer with ambitious dreams into one of the city's most sought-after architectural visualizers. His digital renderings brought unbuilt structures to life with such emotional resonance that developers fought for his services, paying premium rates for the meta touch. "Spectacular view for a spectacular night," said Rohan, his business partner, handing Arjun a glass of champagne. Behind them, their office anniversary party continued in full swing. Creative professionals, clients, and industry leaders mingling among displays of Arjun's most celebrated work. 5 years since you walked into my firm with that portfolio of small-town photography and convinced me you could translate that eye to architecture." Arjun smiled mechanically, clinking his glass against Rohan's. "Who would have thought?" "I did," Rohan laughed. "That's why I hired you. Though I still don't understand why you never went back to visit your hometown. Not even once in 5 years." Arjun turned away from the window, his expression carefully neutral. Nothing to go back for. Later that night, after the last guest had departed and the cleaning crew had erased all evidence of celebration, Arjun sat alone in his living room. The silence felt oppressive despite the tasteful furnishings and expensive art that surrounded him. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to the one contact he never called but couldn't bring himself to delete. Priya Sharma. Her profile picture had changed over the years, from the smiling medical resident he'd left behind to a confident doctor in professional attire. He had followed her career from afar through mutual connections and social media glimpses. Dr. Priya Sharma had become the youngest head physician at Kalpana Regional Hospital, transforming rural healthcare with innovative outreach programs. Every achievement of hers felt like both a vindication of her path and an indictment of his. Absence, Arjun set down his phone without calling, just as he had done countless nights before, and walked to his home office. Inside a locked drawer lay the one piece of his past he'd kept, his old film camera and a stack of photographs, images of Kalpana in all its modest glory. Street scenes, festivals, ordinary moments transformed by his perspective. And Priya, laughing by the riverbank, concentrating over medical textbooks, looking at him with love so evident it now burned to witness. "What would you think of me now, Priya?" he whispered to the empty room. "I have everything I thought I wanted. Everything except peace. Everything except home." The next morning, nursing both a champagne headache and the familiar ache of regret, Arjun found himself agreeing to an unusual request from Rohan. The community center in the Eastern District needs volunteers for their children's art program, Rohan explained. "Great PR opportunity. Plus, the firm is bidding on the center's expansion project." "Why me?" Arjun protested. "I'm not good with kids." "Because your name carries weight," Rohan replied simply. "And frankly, you need to get out more. All you do is work and brood in that fancy apartment." A week later, Arjun reluctantly entered the bustling community center, camera in hand to document the event. Children of various ages scattered throughout the space engaged in painting, drawing, and clay modeling. He moved awkwardly among them, snapping occasional photographs while avoiding actual interaction. "You're holding it wrong," came a small, confident voice. Arjun looked down to find a boy of about 4 years old staring critically at his digital camera. The child had unruly black hair and a serious expression that seemed incongruous with his paint-splattered appearance. "Excuse me?" Arjun replied, surprised. "The camera," the boy explained with the infinite patience of children educating adults. "You're too stiff." "My mom says you should breathe and feel the picture before you take it." Arjun froze. Those words, they were his own, repeated back to him in a child's voice. Words he had once shared with Priya when teaching her photography. "Your mom sounds smart," he managed to say, kneeling to the boy's level. "What's your name?" "Vihan Sharma," the child answered, extending a paint-smeared hand with formal politeness. "I'm 4 3/4, Sharma." A common enough surname, Arjun told himself, even as his heart thundered in his chest. But as he looked more closely at Vihan's features, the distinctive arch of eyebrows so like his own, the dimple in the left cheek when he smiled, denial became impossible. "And your mom?" Arjun asked, his voice barely steady. "What's her name?" "Dr. Priya Sharma," Vihan replied proudly. "She fixes people, and she teaches me photography on her day off." The world around Arjun seemed to tilt on its axis. Here, in this random community center in Mahira City, hundreds of miles from Kalpana, stood living proof of what he had left behind, what he had never known existed. His son. "The unexpected encounter. Do you like drawing buildings?" Vihan asked, tugging Arjun toward a table scattered with papers. "I make lots of buildings. Mom says I have tectonic talent." "Architectural talent," Arjun corrected automatically, following in a daze. His mind raced with calculations. 5 years since he'd left, Vihan was almost 5. Priya must have been pregnant when he departed, perhaps not even knowing herself. Vihan proudly displayed his drawings, structures that showed remarkable spatial awareness for a child his age. "This one's our home in Kalpana," he explained, pointing to a surprisingly detailed sketch of a modest house with a garden. "And this is where Mom works. And this," he lowered his voice conspiratorially, "is my secret hideout by the river." The river, where Arjun had first told Priya he loved her, where they had dreamed of their future together. "These are very good," Arjun managed, his voice thick with emotion. "You might become an architect someday." Vihan shook his head decisively. "No, I'm going to be a doctor photographer." "Both, like Mom and—" He stopped suddenly, his expression clouding. "Like Mom and who?" Arjun prompted gently. "Mom says my father was a great photographer," Vihan replied, suddenly intent on rearranging his colored pencils. "She keeps his pictures in a special box. Sometimes she looks at them when she thinks I'm sleeping." Arjun felt his chest constrict. "Is your father around?" "He had to go away before I was born," Vihan said with practiced casualness that couldn't quite hide the longing beneath. "Mom says he had important things to do in the big city. I used to think maybe he'd come back when he finished. But I'm almost 5 now, so his work must be really, really big." The innocence of the explanation, clearly crafted by Priya to shield their son from rejection, pierced Arjun more deeply than any accusation could have. "What brings you to Mahira City?" Arjun asked, struggling to maintain composure. "Mom's receiving an award for her rural medicine program," Vihan announced proudly. "We're staying with Aunt Nisha for the whole week. She works here at the center and brought me today because Mom had meetings." Nisha, Priya's college roommate. Arjun had forgotten she had moved to Mahira years ago. "Is your mom coming to pick you up later?" The question emerged with more urgency than Arjun intended. At 5 o'clock. Vihan glanced at the Mickey Mouse watch on his wrist. "That's when the big hand and the little hand both point up." 3 hours away. 3 hours to process the revelation that had upended Arjun's carefully constructed life. 3 hours to decide what to do. "Vihan, would you like to learn how to take professional photographs?" Arjun offered, desperate for more time with this child, his child. The boy's face lit up with excitement. For the next 2 hours, Arjun taught Vihan basic photography principles, marveling at how quickly he absorbed concepts that had taken Arjun years to master. The boy's intuitive understanding of composition and light was uncanny, an inheritance as sure as his dimpled smile. As Vihan reviewed his photographs on Arjun's camera display, a familiar voice called from across the room. "Vihan! Time to pack up, Beta!" Arjun looked up to see Nisha approaching, her steps faltering when she recognized him. Her expression transformed from surprise to cold fury in an instant. "Arjun Mehta," she stated flatly. "What are you doing with Vihan?" "He was teaching me photography, Aunt Nisha," Vihan exclaimed. "He's really good." "Almost as good as my dad was." Nisha's face paled. She grabbed Vihan's hand firmly. "Go get your backpack, Vihan. Now, please." Once the boy was out of earshot, Nisha turned to Arjun with barely contained rage. "How dare you? Does Priya know you're here?" "I had no idea," Arjun said quietly. "About any of this. About him." "What, you think that makes it better?" Nisha hissed. "That for 5 years you never bothered to check if there might be consequences to your actions?" "Nisha, please. I need to talk to Priya." "You've lost the right to need anything from her," Nisha replied coldly. "Priya and Vihan have built a beautiful life without you. They don't need you swooping in now that the hard parts are over." "He's my son," Arjun said, the word strange and wonderful on his tongue. "Biology doesn't make you a father, Arjun. Being there does." Nisha's expression softened marginally. "Look, it's not my decision to make. If you want to talk to Priya, she's receiving her award at the Mahira Medical Convention tomorrow evening. Public event. You can approach her there." Vihan bounded back, oblivious to the tension. "Can my new friend come to dinner with us, Aunt Nisha? He knows all about camera angles." Nisha forced a smile. "Not tonight, sweetheart. Say goodbye now." Vihan turned to Arjun with a disappointed frown. "Will you be here tomorrow?" "I can bring my own camera." Before Arjun could answer, Nisha cut in. "Mr. Mehta is very busy with his important city work." Vihan. The echo of what Priya had told their son about his absent father wasn't lost on Arjun. As he watched Nisha lead Vihan away, the boy turning to wave goodbye with a smile that mirrored his own, Arjun made the first truly certain decision he'd made in 5 years. His place was with them, if they would have him. But first, he had to face the woman whose heart he had broken and whose strength had created the miracle he'd just met. The confrontation. The Mahira Medical Convention blazed with lights and professional energy as Arjun slipped into the back row of the auditorium. He felt profoundly out of place among the medical professionals in their formal attire, though he'd dressed carefully in his best suit. The program indicated Dr. Priya Sharma would receive the Rural Healthcare Innovation Award as the evening's culmination. When she finally took the stage, Arjun's breath caught in his throat. 5 years had transformed Priya from the promising medical resident he remembered into a commanding presence. Her hair was shorter now, falling in a sleek bob around her face, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had proven her worth many times over. Nothing in her poised demeanor suggested a woman who had raised a child alone while pioneering healthcare initiatives. Rural communities deserve more than medical charity, Priya was saying, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. They deserve sustainable healthcare systems designed with their specific needs in mind. The Kalpana model demonstrates what's possible when we truly listen to the people we serve. Pride and regret warred in Arjun's chest as he watched the audience respond to her with obvious respect. This was the future Priya had envisioned when he had dismissed Kalpana as too small for his ambitions. She had stayed and transformed their hometown while he had fled to chase material success. After the ceremony, Arjun hovered at the edges of the reception, watching as Priya accepted congratulations from colleagues. He nearly lost his nerve several times, turning toward the exit before forcing himself to stay. Finally, as the crowd thinned, he approached her. "Congratulations, Dr. Sharma," he said softly. Priya froze at the sound of his voice, her back to him for several long seconds before she turned. Her expression revealed nothing, schooled into professional neutrality, but her knuckles whitened around her award plaque. "Arjun," she acknowledged. "This is unexpected." "I met Vihan yesterday," he said, deciding direct honesty was the only possible approach. "At the community center." The color drained from Priya's face. "I see. That explains Nisha's strange behavior last night." She glanced around at the remaining guests. "This isn't the place for this conversation." "I know. I'm sorry. Arjun struggled for words adequate to the moment. "Can we talk, please?" 20 minutes later, they sat in a quiet cafe near the convention center, an untouched pot of tea between them. The silence stretched painfully until Priya finally broke it. "I was going to tell you I was pregnant," she said, her voice clinically detached, "the morning you left. But then you said all those things about Kalpana being a prison, about needing to find yourself, about us being a mistake." She looked up, finally meeting his eyes fully. "So I didn't tell you. I decided if Kalpana and I weren't worth staying for, you didn't deserve to know about our child." The righteous anger Arjun had expected had prepared himself to face. This calm recitation of facts was somehow worse. "I never said we were a mistake," he protested weakly. "You didn't have to say it. You demonstrated it." Priya sipped her tea. "For what it's worth, I did try to reach you about 3 months after Vihan was born. Your number was disconnected. I called your parents, but they said you'd asked them not to share your new contact information with anyone from Kalpana." Arjun winced. He had indeed made that request during a particularly low period, when memories of Priya had threatened to draw him back before he'd made something of himself. "I had no idea," he said. "If I'd known about Vihan, you'd have what?" Priya interrupted sharply. "Sent child support from afar, made occasional visits between important projects. Our son deserved better than a part-time father." "Our son," Arjun repeated, the words still new and miraculous. Something in his expression must have reached Priya, because her professional mask slipped, revealing a flash of the woman he'd once known. "He asks about you," she admitted quietly. "Not his father as a concept, you specifically. He somehow intuited that his father was the photographer whose work I kept. He has your eye, Arjun, your way of seeing the world." "And your determination," Arjun added. "Your compassion. What do you want from us?" Priya asked bluntly. "You've built a successful life in Mahira. We've built ours in Kalpana. Why disrupt that now? The question hung between them, demanding absolute honesty. Because I've been wrong for 5 years, Arjun said, his voice breaking. Because my life looks successful but feels empty. Because meeting Vihan made me realize what I threw away. He reached across the table, not quite touching her hand. I'm not asking to step back into your lives as if nothing happened, Priya. I know I don't have that right. But I'm asking for a chance to earn a place in Vihan's life. And maybe someday, to show you that I've changed. People don't change fundamentally, Arjun. They just become more authentically themselves. Priya stood, gathering her belongings. We're returning to Kalpana the day after tomorrow. I need time to think about how to handle this with Vihan. Can I see him again before you go? Arjun asked, desperation edging his voice. Priya considered him for a long moment. Tomorrow morning, Nisha's apartment. But only if you're certain, Arjun. Because if you meet him as his father and then disappear again, I will never forgive you. As she walked away, Arjun realized the enormity of what lay ahead. He had exactly one night to make the most consequential decision of his life, whether to uproot his entire existence for a second chance he might not deserve. By dawn, he knew his answer. Some architectural projects were designed to stand for centuries. Some foundations were worth rebuilding your life upon. The reconciliation. 6 months later, Arjun stood in the dusty main street of Kalpana, watching as familiar faces registered first surprise, then curiosity at his presence. The small town hadn't changed much in 5 years. The same shops lined the street. The same temple bells rang in the distance, but his perspective had transformed entirely. His meeting with Vihan at Nisha's apartment had been both wonderful and terrifying. Priya had introduced him simply as someone very special who wants to know you better, leaving the full truth for later. They had spent 3 hours building a camera obscura together out of a cardboard box. Vihan's questions and observations repeatedly confirming what Arjun already knew. This child was extraordinary. Before leaving, Arjun had handed Priya an envelope containing his decision: the lease termination for his Mahira apartment, resignation letter from the firm, and a business plan for a photography studio and architectural visualization consultancy in Kalpana. I'm moving back, he'd told her. Not to force my way into your lives, but to be available on whatever terms you set. I'll find a small place on the other side of town if that makes you more comfortable. Priya had accepted the envelope without promising anything, except that she would call once they were home and had processed everything. That call had led to months of careful negotiation, first with lawyers establishing Arjun's legal rights and responsibilities as Vihan's father, then with family therapists helping to navigate the complex emotional terrain of integrating him into their lives. Throughout it all, Priya had maintained professional distance, focusing entirely on Vihan's well-being. Now, Arjun approached the small house near the hospital where Priya and Vihan lived. Today marked a significant milestone, the first time Vihan would stay overnight at Arjun's newly established home in Kalpana. Baba, Vihan called excitedly, spotting him from the porch where he sat with his backpack already strapped on. The name, chosen by Vihan himself after learning the full truth about Arjun, still brought a lump to Arjun's throat every time he heard it. Ready for our camping adventure? Arjun asked, high-fiving his son. I packed extra batteries for our night photography, Vihan announced proudly. And Mom made special cookies. Priya appeared in the doorway holding a cloth-wrapped package. Oatmeal raisin, she explained, handing it to Arjun. Still your favorite? You remembered, Arjun said, touched by the small gesture. Hard to forget the man who once ate 17 cookies in one sitting, Priya replied with the ghost of a smile. It was the first genuinely warm expression she'd offered him since his return. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, a fleeting contact that nonetheless sent electricity through Arjun's body. They had been so careful to maintain physical distance during all their co-parenting discussions. We'll be back tomorrow afternoon, Arjun assured her. I've got the emergency contact list, allergy information, bedtime routine, everything we discussed. Priya nodded, kneeling to kiss Vihan goodbye. Have fun, Beta. Remember your manners and listen to your father. Your father. 2 words that acknowledged what they were building, however slowly. Later that evening, with Vihan finally asleep in the tent, Arjun had pitched in his small backyard. Arjun sat by the campfire and called Priya as promised. "He's asleep," he reported, after 3 bedtime stories and about 1,000 questions about constellations. "That sounds right," Priya laughed softly. "He's been obsessed with astronomy lately." A comfortable silence fell between them, filled only by the crackling of Arjun's fire and the faint sounds of Priya preparing tea on her end of the line. "I've been thinking," Priya said suddenly, "about that photography exhibition you're planning for the cultural center." "What about it?" Arjun asked, surprised by the shift in topic. "The hospital needs updated promotional materials, professional photographs of our staff, facilities, outreach programs. I thought perhaps we could collaborate. Your visuals, my healthcare focus, like we used to talk about before." Arjun's heart raced at the tentative olive branch. "I'd like that very much," he said carefully. "This doesn't mean—" Priya started, then stopped herself. "I'm not ready to—" "It's just a professional collaboration." "I understand," Arjun assured her. "I'm not asking for more than you're ready to give, Priya. I'm just grateful to be back in Kalpana, to know Vihan, to see the incredible work you're doing." Another silence, but this one charged with unspoken emotions. "I was so angry at you," Priya finally admitted, "for years. Then seeing how Vihan responds to you, how natural you are with him, it's confusing." "For me too," Arjun confessed. "I keep thinking about parallel lives, the one we might have had if I'd stayed, the one you and Vihan built without me, the empty one I constructed in Mahira. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by everything I missed. And sometimes I wonder if we needed that separation," Priya said thoughtfully. "You weren't ready then, Arjun. For Kalpana, for fatherhood, maybe even for us. I wasn't ready either in many ways. We've both grown so much since then." It was the most personal conversation they'd had since his return, and Arjun held his breath, afraid to break the spell. "Vihan asked me last week if you were going to live with us someday," Priya continued, her voice barely audible. "I didn't know what to tell him." "What do you want to tell him?" Arjun asked, his heart in his throat. "I told him that grown-up relationships are complicated, but that you and I both love him very much." She paused. "And that sometimes people who have hurt each other need time to learn how to be in each other's lives again." "That's a wise answer," he said, and I quote, "But you smile different when Baba comes over." Priya's voice held reluctant amusement. "Apparently I have a special Baba smile that's a dead giveaway," Arjun laughed softly. "He notices everything." "He gets that from both of us," Priya acknowledged. "Listen, Arjun, I'm not making any promises, but I'm not closing any doors either. Can that be enough for now?" "More than enough," Arjun assured her, watching the stars above that mirrored the ones Vihan had been so curious about. "We have time." In the tent behind him, Vihan mumbled in his sleep, secure in the knowledge that both his parents were in his life, each a phone call away. And on the other end of the line, Priya sat in the kitchen where she had spent so many nights alone, now filled with the voice of a man finding his way back home, not to the place he had left, but to the family he hadn't known he needed. Time would reveal whether romantic love could be rebuilt from the ashes of abandonment and forgiveness. But a different love, the fierce, protective love for their son, had already created a bridge between their separate worlds. And sometimes bridges become foundations for structures more beautiful and enduring than anything originally imagined. In Kalpana, where Arjun had once seen limitations, he now recognized the outline of a future taking shape. Not the one he had run from, but one he was finally brave enough to build, one careful day at a time.